Good morning, everyone. The halacha today, continuing on Siman Shin Mem, we are introduced to the melacha of me'amer on Shabbat. Me'amer is the fourth melacha that happened on Shabbat after they reaped the harvest. So there was a lot of bundles of hay, or there was hay on the ground, or there was actually seeds on the ground. So to gather them all together in one place is a melacha of me'amer. And from here we see on Shabbat that you're not allowed to gather things from the field in one place. But the Shulchan Aruch adds on from the Rambam in Siman Shin Mem Sif Yud another halacha, which is hamikabetz devela ve'asab menu igul. Let's say you take figs together and you make them into like a cake, or you take te'enim, or you take figs and you put a string through them and you make them, and the Rambam says until they're made into one entity. So you're liable mishu me'amer. Now what's interesting is that it seems to be from the Rambam that you have to make it into one entity. On the other hand, the Shulchan Aruch writes in Siftet that when you're gathering different, even salt, it looks like me'amer, but you're also not allowed to gather anything from the place where it grew. Now let's say you gather something from the ground that it grew, but you're not making it into one thing. That's also asur. So in order to be liable for me'amer, it has to be one or two things. Either you're gathering from the place where it grew originally. For example, you have in your backyard a tree that grows apples and pears, and they fell. Now if they fell on Shabbat, that's the muktzeh, that's the highest muktzeh. But let's say it fell before Shabbat. Say, you know what, on Shabbat, I'll tell the kids to gather it up, or we'll gather it up ourselves. That is a Torah prohibition. And Rabbi Baruch Toledano brings in the Kisur Shulchan Aruch that you have to be very careful about this. He brings this in Siman Shin Yudchet Ot Lamed Zayin, that you have to be especially careful because even a little bit, even a small shiur, you're chayav mishum me'amer. He says even if you're gonna do like the size of a fig, like two little things together, that's already me'amer. So that's one characteristic. Another characteristic is, let's say it's not from the place it grew. For example, these figs that the Shulchan Aruch is talking about, but you make them, press them together into one thing, it will be forbidden. So the great Hachamim of Baghdad, they had a question, the Ben Ish Chai and Rav Pe'alim Chelik Bet, or Achaim Siman Mem Bet, they had a minhag over there to press different dates together, and dates and nuts, with a little bit of like a presser on Shabbat. So he said maybe you could do it through a shinui, he's not sure. And his Rav was called Rav Eliyahu Mani. He lived in Hebron and he would ask him questions. And Rav Eliyahu Mani in Shelot Uchuvotana de Beliyahu Siman Lamed Aleph, Amud Kuf Tzadi Aleph, writes that Lechara, what you're doing here is a prohibition of me'amer. You're gathering these things together. So Rabbi Mani says, but maybe there's reasons to allow it. Number one, maybe it didn't grow there and it's allowed. And number two, maybe there are as opinion of the Maram Susin that says that as long as it's done right away, like Borer, it's allowed. And even though there are those who argue, like the Marit Al-Ghazi, that right away is not allowed. But maybe we could rely on this opinion because he was such a great rabbi. They have a whole discussion about this. But either way, it's a very big chidush according to what we're saying. Because since you're putting it together into one entity, even if it didn't grow there, it should be asur. Even if it didn't grow there, it should be asur. Either way, it's a very big discussion. And you should know that me'amer doesn't come up often. But for example, people want to, let's say they want to string beads on Shabbat. That also, since it's not makom gidulo, and you're not making it into one entity, there's a reason to say that it would be allowed. Stringing pearls as well. Let's say somebody wants to string pearls. Even though it's not makom gidu, since it's not makom gidulo, it's not the original place where the pearls grew, and it's not making it into one entity, there would be a thought to say that would be allowed. So once again, if you want to press figs together or dates, you can't on Shabbat. If you want to gather things from your garden on Shabbat, you also can't. But that is the limitations of me'amer. Chazaku Baruch.